first resonance that you want to consider when you try to interpret Venus in Scorpio, or learn how to begin interpreting Venus in Scorpio in isolation, is that Venus is about sensuality and Scorpio is about passion. And those two things go pretty well together. So you could classify that tentatively as a harmonious resonance, though it can be dangerous to have passionate sensuality. Basically, it's a good thing. So Scorpio Venus natives, you expect them to be passionate people, simple. Sensual people, sexual people. They certainly won't be unopinionated about sex. The next resonance to consider between Venus and Scorpio is that Venus is the planet of partnership, whereas Scorpio is the sign of independence or individuality, individualism. And so this functions as a clash between the planet and the sign. And therefore you expect the Scorpio Venus native to be what I like to call maverick or independent. They don't really depend upon relationships too much. They do their own thing. In fact, they make very good leaders because they don't really fit in the role of a follower or a cooperator very much. But they work well in a group when they're setting what should be cooperated with, but not when they're being told what should be cooperated with. So they tend to stumble in subordinate relationships or in pure cooperative relationships, but they tend to thrive where they get the microphone or where they get the scepter or where they're allowed to dictate or say what's going to happen, what people should cooperate with. And one additional thing, Venus in Scorpio is classically famous as an adulterous placement. And the reasoning is because, first of all, it's got passionate sensuality, and second of all, it's got a clash between partnership or relationship and independence. So people will tend to be not that bound to the partnerships, and they either won't be very inclined to form marriages, or the marriages will break frequently, or they will just kind of not really observe the boundaries of the marriage very strictly. Now, of course, this always needs to be repeated 7,000 times a second. You have to take the textbook theoretical interpretation of a planet and a sign and realize that it's the textbook interpretation. It has to blend and mix with everything else in the chart. As you'll see, I'll eventually show you in this video Gandhi's chart in comparison to Cardi B's chart. And the whole thing is just about they both have Venus and Scorpio. Let's see the context of it. Moving on, the next resonance between Venus and Scorpio, which is quite important, is that Venus is a peace planet because it's a cooperation planet, whereas Scorpio is a defiance sign because it's rebellious, because it's independent. So this is kind of an offshoot of the previous synergy, the partnership versus independence. Partnership tends to be cooperative, cooperation tends to be peaceful. Independence tends to be rebellious, rebellious tends to be defiant. Defiant tends to be argumentative. So there's a clash here also between the planet of peace and the sign of defiance or argument. And as a result, the Scorpio Venus native is expected to be non-cooperative. And we've sort of already said that in the partnership versus independence thing. So the new thing to introduce here is it's not just non-cooperative, but it's also non-docile. So they don't like to remain in neutral, nor do they like to be told what to do. They're non-docile, they set their own path. It's not really entirely positive. It's like they set their own path and they can't really do anything else but that. The peaceful and defiance clash also brings out this quality, is that the Scorpio Venus native defies norms. They don't cooperate, means they don't go along with things. Not going along with things means going outside of the box, doing what was not expected, doing what other people don't do. So these natives are very good at being norm defiers, going outside of boundaries, doing things for the first time. Another implication of this clash between peaceful and defiant, or peaceful and argumentative, is that they're argumentative and they're not very calm. They'll be explosive and strong in their opposition to things. And the classic texts say that they are good at killing things. In other words, they're very good as warriors. They're good fighters. So they go very strongly against the thing that they don't agree with. And the final resonance between Venus and Scorpio that you have to bear in mind to understand what Venus and Scorpio does is another positive one. Venus is the planet of receptivity, and Scorpio is the sign of secrecy. So it's mildly positive and mildly resonant, but it does create a significant effect. See, secrecy is something that you need to listen to. In order to perceive secrets, you have to listen very carefully. Venus is very receptive, or a listening type of a planet. It's sensitive and listens. So the receptivity in Venus and the secrecy in Scorpio does connect. And it creates the effect of the native being well attuned to secrets. And therefore they get themselves involved in secrets. And secrecy also goes hand in hand with jealousy. Spy, espionage, jealousy, that kind of thing. Okay, now let's have a look at some actual people that are well known who have Venus in Scorpio, and see if we can give kind of a face to some of these characteristics. We got Leonardo DiCaprio, Hillary Clinton, Bill Gates, Vladimir Putin, Jodie Foster, Mahatma Gandhi, Jay-Z, Ted Bundy, Joe Biden, Jim Morrison, Bruce Lee, Joaquin Phoenix, Charles Manson, Demi Moore, Avril Lavigne, Cardi B, Winona Ryder, Snoop Dogg, and Jacques Chirac. All of these guys really have a lot of sensuality or passion to them, almost all of them. It's obvious. But the ones that really stand out as being passionate or sensual or sexual is like Leonardo DiCaprio, Jodie Foster, Jim Morrison is a real hit. Joaquin Phoenix, Demi Moore, Avril Lavigne, Cardi B, bam, off the charts on this one. Winona Ryder. So these names really put a face to this quality of Venus and Scorpio being sensual and sexy. And then as for the partnership and the independence issue with Venus and Scorpio, look at these names. They really indicate how Venus and Scorpio thrives on leadership and is quite good at leadership. Hillary Clinton, Bill Gates, Vladimir Putin, Mahatma Gandhi, Jacques Chirac. And also relating with this, the adultery issue, kind of like some of these names. Bill Gates is very famous very recently. Vladimir Putin, Jim Morrison, Jacques Chirac. Of course, probably all these people. Maybe not Mahatma Gandhi. But besides Mahatma, probably all of them have pretty racy. Hillary Clinton we could also give an arrow to. And not in the sense of her being adulterous, probably, unless we just don't know about it, but in her being involved with it. And then as for giving a face to this nature of Venus and Scorpio as being defiant, look at Hillary Clinton. These are the norm defiers. Hillary Clinton is a huge norm defier. She's tried to be the first female president in the United States. This would have defied a huge norm. And just her running and almost succeeding defied a huge norm. Mahatma Gandhi, non-cooperation was his motto. That was his thing. Jay-Z, norm-defying rapper. Ted Bundy, certainly argumentative, good in fights, likes to kill people, good at people, not cooperative, not good in relationships. Bruce Lee, good in fights. In a different way, in a positive sense. You have Ted Bundy on one hand, you have Bruce Lee on the other. Joaquin Phoenix, norm-defying. Very abnormal, atypical Hollywood actor. Charles Manson, again, likes to kill people, good at killing people, very antisocial, non-cooperative, non-docile, norm-defying. Cardi B, super norm-defying. Snoop Dogg, also a typical rapper, norm defier. And as for the secrecy thing or the jealousy thing, Hillary Clinton is a big match for this with the scandal of the email thing that got wielded against her. Gets involved in secrecy or scandal. Vladimir Putin is completely, that's his whole thing, espionage, scandal, secrecy. Ted Bundy, a lot of envy, hatred, secrecy, deception. Demi Moore, I forgot why. Winona Ryder with all those problems with the law. Jacques Chirac, completely corrupt. Out of all these, I think the two most interesting and kind of most diametrically opposed are Mahatma Gandhi and Cardi B. So let's take a look at these two charts for a second or two. The problem with both of the charts is that we don't have any reliable time of birth. That doesn't mean that we can't look at the charts. It just means that you have to make sure that you don't start thinking about anything that has to do with houses. Nothing that pertains to the ascendant can be trusted because you don't know the time of birth, but everything else can be trusted. So for Mahatma Gandhi, there is the Venus in Scorpio, and it's right next to Mars. And it's right across from Jupiter. So Mahatma Gandhi's Scorpio Venus is getting a huge influence from the Mars-Jupiter combo. The Mars-Jupiter combo is famous for giving a passion for law, enforcement, rules. And so he's a lawyer. And he becomes a very forceful, norm-defying, strident lawyer who uses the Venusian qualities of non-cooperation and just plain defiance, non-violent defiance. So that's Gandhi's Scorpio Venus. Since we don't know the time of birth, we can't say what house Lord Mars is, but if we knew, it would really be helpful. Because to be that close to another planet, you'll get very influenced by whatever houses it owns. We can say from the moon that Mars is the yoga karaka and forms a yoga, Raja Yoga, by influencing this Venus, so it's keeping it very good. If you look at the Navamsha, which you can also trust, you cannot trust the houses of the Navamsha, but you can trust the signs that are in the Navamsha, even if you don't know the birth time. So here you got Venus in Scorpio, again in the Navamsha, so it's Vargotama. So the principle with Vargotama is that this automatically gives good dignity to the planet. It gives the result of good dignity to the planet. So it's not going to have low dignity. It's not going to be like Cardi B, which is like on the streets, in the dirt kind of dignity. It's going to be an elevated type of dignity, which is dignified. And it's with Ketu. Ketu next to Venus is famous for making celibates. Ketu with Venus is famous for making spiritualists who spiritualize the sexuality and things like that. So that's why Mahatma Gandhi doesn't have this big, sexy attitude to him at all. He's the antithesis of that. He's more about how the non-cooperative, rebellious nature of Venus and Scorpio applies to legal and moral settings because of the Jupiter and the Mars having such a huge influence on that Venus and Scorpio. Cardi B, again, birth time is not known, so ignore the houses. But there you can see her Venus in Scorpio doesn't have Mars. It's all by itself. It's not even that close to the Mercury. So it's a more clear, simple Venus in Scorpio. In fact, if you look for the Mars in her chart, you'll find it's in an entirely different dignity than Gandhi's. Gandhi's Mars is in a really good dignity. Cardi B's Mars is in the lowest dignity, which is called fall. It's in Cancer. So there's not going to be dignity to her passions. It's going to be just on the street, straight out, unrefined. Nor is her Venus really affected at all by her Jupiter, nor is her Jupiter really significant at all because it's exactly on Sunday. And combust. So whereas Mahatma Gandhi has Jupiter actually dominating the chart, Jupiter is dominating this chart even if you don't know the birth time because of all the planets that it's aspecting. So Mahatma Gandhi's chart is completely dominated by Jupiter. Cardi B has Jupiter absent from the chart. Hers is completely dominated by the moon as far as we can tell without a birth time. Because of the moon is doing that. What Jupiter is doing in Gandhi's chart, the moon in Aries is doing in Cardi B's chart. It's aspecting all these planets. And so becoming very influential. In place of Jupiter's and Mars's influence on Venus, what's influencing Cardi's Venus is Saturn. And with a great dignity, Saturn in Mool Trikona. So she's rising up out of obscurity and becoming a super, super wealthy, super influential, super popular. Because that's what Saturn does in good dignity. But Saturn also is the planet of dirt and filth and down to earth, basic practical stuff, no finesse, no frills. To show you just how connected her Scorpio Venus is to Saturn, look at her Navamsha. Again, you can trust Navamshas without birth time. You just can't trust anything about the ascendant. So you can't trust the houses of the Navamsha. So here you can see her Navamsha Venus is in Capricorn with Saturn. So that's Saturn she has is phenomenally good. It's in Aquarius in the main chart and Capricorn in the Navamsha. And her Venus is aspected perfectly by Saturn in the birth chart, in the main chart. And it's conjoined with Saturn in the Navamsha. So really what you have, the difference between Cardi B and Mahatma Gandhi is one is a Jupiter-dominated chart. The other is a Moon and Aries-dominated chart. One is a Venus and Scorpio that's really strongly affected by Jupiter and Mars. And the other is a Venus and Scorpio that's really strongly affected by Saturn and Saturn and Saturn. And that explains and illustrates the difference between these two. Now what we do in these videos with the planets and the signs is I show you a consistent technique that you can use for any planet and any sign. And the technique is very simple. You look for where the planet symbolizes something that's very, very similar to what the sign symbolizes. And once you find that, you assess whether or not the planet and the sign are harmonious about that thing or whether they're antithetical about that thing. The dissonant resonance reveals what's complex or difficult for the native. The harmonious resonance, on the other hand, indicates what's easy, what comes natural, what's an inherent strength for the native. What I'm teaching you really is the method of how to do astrological interpretation by going down into the engine of the symbolism and comparing the parts. The actual interpretation that you should give is going to be individualized per the individual chart. So if you have person A with the moon in Scorpio and person B with the moon in Scorpio, it's not going to be exactly the same interpretation. Because person B's moon might have an aspect from something and person A's moon doesn't, etc., 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 etc. But what I'm showing you in the videos is the backbone of what a planet and a sign symbolizes. And once you understand that backbone, you modify it based on the circumstances, the extraneous circumstances that are affecting an individual chart. So I hope you really like this system, not just this one video, but all the videos that we do on the planets and the signs. We'll do them all. And I hope you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those. And I hope to see you around soon. Thank you.